Early works of Japanese literature was written in Chinese and was heavily influenced by cultural contact with China and Chinese literature. Buddhism was spread throughout Japan through Indian literature. Japanese eventually developed into a separate style, even though the influence of Chinese literature and classical Chinese remained. Japan opened its ports to Western trading and diplomacy in the 19th century. This is when Western literature influenced the development of modern Japanese writers. Western literature influenced the development of modern Japanese writers, which led to recognition outside of Japan. Japanese literature has earned 2 Nobel Prizes in 2020. Earliest literary works in Japan. Nara period before 794 AD. Japan had no writing system before the introduction of kanji, which came from China. Chinese characters came to Japan at the very beginning of the 5th century. They were brought by immigrants from the mainland, Korea and China, who were of Korean and Chinese descent. Early Japanese texts first followed the Chinese model. The text gradually transitioned to a hybrid of Chinese characters used in Japanese syntactical, which is word order, formats. The result was sentences written with Chinese characters but written phonetically in Japanese. Chinese characters became man-yogana, the earliest form of kana, Japanese symbolic writing. The Kojiki, 712 AD, is a historical record that also chronicles ancient Japanese mythology and folk songs. The Nihon Shoki, 720 AD, is a chronicle written in Chinese that is significantly more detailed than the Kojiki, and the Manyoshu, 759 AD, a poetry anthology. One story the Manyoshu describes is the tale of the Urashima Taro. Heian literature, 794 to 1185 AD. The Heian period is the golden era of art and literature in Japan. Literature became centered on a cultural elite of nobility and monks. Poetry was elegant and sophisticated and expressed emotions in a rhetorical style. The national pastime was editing the resulting anthologies of poetry. Iroha is one of 2 standard orderings for the Japanese syllabary, which was also developed during the early Heian period. Kamakura Muromachi period literature, 1185 to 1603 AD. The Kamakura period, 1185 to 1330 AD, had many civil wars which led up to the development of a warrior class and subsequent war tales, histories, and related stories. Literature was noted for its more somber tone. One example is the tale of the Heike by Heike Monogatari, 1371 AD, which is an epic account of the struggle between the Minamoto and Taira clans for control of Japan at the end of the 12th century. Development of roads along with a growing public interest in travel and pilgrimages popularized travel literature from the early 13th to 14th centuries. Travel diaries include Fuji Kiko, 1432 AD, and Tsukushi Michi no Ki, 14 AD. Edo period literature, 1603 to 1868 AD. Literature was written during the mostly peaceful Tokugawa period, Edo, which is the Edo period. This is because of the increase of the working and middle classes of the new capital of Edo, now Tokyo. The different forms of drama developed into kabuki theater. Chikamatsu Monza Emon, 1653 to 1725 AD, was popular at the end of the 17th century. He is known as Japan's Shakespeare. Matsuo Basho, 1644 to 1694 AD, is the greatest master of haiku, formerly Hoku. His poems are influenced by his first-hand experience of the world around him. He summarized the feeling of a scene in a few simple elements. Haiku is now a literary genre. Meiji, Taisho, and early Showa period literature, 1868 to 1945 AD. The Meiji period reopened Japan to the Western world, ending 2 centuries of national seclusion, which started rapid industrialization. European literature was introduced, and it brought free verse into the world of poetry. Longer works became widely used, and new intellectual themes were developed. Japanese novelists assimilated the concept of European literature into their writing. Natsume Soseki, 1867 to 1916 AD, wrote the humorous novel Waga Hai wa Neko de Aru, I Am a Cat, in 1905 AD. The cat was the narrator. A variety of literature was written during this time. Post-war literature, 1945 AD onwards. World War II and Japan's defeat deeply influenced Japanese literature. Stories about disaffection, dissatisfaction with authority, loss of purpose, and coping with defeat were written. Osamu Dazai's novel, The Setting Sun, is about a soldier returning from Manchukuo. Manga comics have penetrated almost every sector of the popular market. It includes virtually every field of human interest. Multi-volume high school histories of Japan. For the adult market, introduction to economics and pornography. At the end of the 1980s, manga represented between 20 and 30% of annual publications, 400 billion yen per year. Cell phone novels appeared in the early 21st century. The novels are written by and for all cell phone users and are typically romances for young women. They are very popular online and in print. Female authors. Female writers in Japan enjoyed a brief period of success during the Heian period, 794 to 1185 AD. They were undermined following the decline in power of the imperial court in the 14th century. Shimuzu Shiken sought to encourage positive comparisons between her contemporaries and their feminine forebears in the hopes that female authors would be viewed with respect by society, despite assuming a public role outside the traditional confines of a woman's role in her home. Female writers are more prominent today. Japanese literature is widely recognized today. Thank you for listening. Please continue to teach and learn. Thank you very much.